So far, we've ranked live-action versions of Poison Ivy, Mr. Zsasz, Riddler, and Catwoman. Links down below like always. However, today we're on to the Penguin. And unlike those other rankings, I don't find myself really disliking any iteration of the Penguin in live action. In fact, I like or even love all of them. Therefore, I was able to rank them. Unlike before, their placings are really just seconds apart from each other. It's a very close call on each single placing on this list. Which in itself is pretty interesting, since the character of the Penguin in the comics is always a character that I am fond of, but never really loved. However, every single time the character's in live action, I typically love them. They're probably usually my favorite versions of the character. So with all that said, let's get into it. And yet again, this is all my personal opinion, which you can disagree with. And last place is a very tough call, but I do think that is Colin Farrell from The Batman. Now don't get me wrong, I do really like this version. However, he only really got 5 minutes of screen time. Therefore, I don't think it would be right of me to put him higher than other actors who play the character for a far longer length of time. Therefore, by default, I do think the Batman Penguin is last, however, probably not for all that long, as he is getting a spin-off show where I am assuming the character will likely be at least third on this list, and the character will have his potential tapped into. Because this iteration of the character, in my personal opinion, has a lot of potential, however, has yet to actually meet it. Instead, his role in the Batman was primarily just a hint as to what has come with this character. And once it does, I'm betting it'll be great. But until then, he is dead last. Third place is the 66 Batman show played by Burgess Meredith. While he's not the deepest penguin out there, for this show and what the tone is, I think Burgess does a great job. This show at no point is ever ashamed of what it is, and that is a campy Batman show. Instead, it just embraces the concept, which includes this version of the Penguin, who despite being silly, he feels identical to the version of the character who was in the comics at this point. And I do mean identical, he really just feels like he was ripped off the comic book page. And I also really liked the fact that they kept the purple theme. I say that because a lot of versions of the Penguin after this, primarily in animation, would for some unknown reason change the purple from being his core theme to then being dark blue. Which, I'll be frank, I don't like that change. And there's no need to change it, the purple is great. It also should be noted that even though the version of this character, like all villains on this show, were campy, there's a pretty big difference between villains like Penguin or Riddler or Joker or Catwoman than there is to villains like Egghead, King Tut, Siren, Zelda. The original villains for the show, while they were fun, they were never really threatening. And even though the main villains are still as silly as them, their plans always seemed more competent. There were actual results, which makes it even better when their plans are ludicrous. Yet, somehow, they work. This version also has some implications of even darker potential. For example, the character would attempt to force Batgirl into marrying him. And while the episode played it for laughs, you can tell in Barbara's reaction that she actually is scared of Penguin, which I think is actually a pretty nice touch. It adds an added layer to the character. He has potential to be darker, but on this show, of course, he can't. Which is okay, because he's still great either way. Either way, I, for some reason, mispronounced my either. But I'm not cutting that because I don't want to. Second place is Batman Returns Penguin, played by Danny DeVito. A very different role than I'm used to seeing DeVito in. Yet, it's great. While this version is very different from the comics, now being deformed in a way that makes him more look like an actual Penguin man, along with a stronger focus on him being a freak rather than being a member of organized crime, which are some pretty big changes, it still, in my opinion, works very well. Now, of course, I know some people don't like it because it's not comic accurate, which I do understand. However, for me personally, I can look past that because I think that this version of the character is very, very good. In fact, I might say great. I've said before that Batman Returns is my favorite Batman movie. And a big reason why is the Penguin. Not the only reason why, but it's one of the big reasons why. There are many reasons why this version of the character shouldn't work. Many reasons. The change from the source material, leaning into the more campy side of the character with him having a odd bird-like diet, and his crush on Catwoman. All things I can see being problematic, yet it's, in my personal opinion, yet again, great. As it still works beautifully. This iteration of the Penguin is dark and iconic. Enough that he was also the inspiration for a Lego Penguin Lego set. I didn't need to say Lego twice in that sentence. Which, by the way, I have. And first place is, of course, Robin Taylor from Gotham. This version of the character is the best thing that came from Gotham, which says a lot because there was a lot of good things from Gotham, or at least there were in my opinion. His arc throughout the series showed how he grew into becoming the Penguin. Starting off as just being the umbrella boy for Fish Mooney, a very, very nice detail, considering the character's history with umbrellas. The character had the best storylines on the show. Either it be taking over the territory of Fish Mooney, Maroni, and Carmine Falcone, or his relationship with the Riddler. That either being a crush, romance, friends, or enemies. The character's friendship with other villains and heroes were also a joy to watch, as well as just having the best one-liners. Second place Jerome, third place Barbara. His sense of fashion also fits the character. He has this gothic creep factor to him, that both make him fit within the world of Gotham, but at the same time it makes him stand out from other gangsters and mobsters. He's both a freak, but he's also a member of organized crime. It's kind of mishmashing those two versions of the character together in a way that I think is amazing. This show does a great job showing that Penguin is not only a serious threat, but a very patient one. He takes his time, which is the most scary part, because you never know when he's going to hit. Tabitha sure didn't. And I like Tabitha, but I was okay with that because it was Penguin that killed her. They also established a friendship between Gordon and the Penguin, which is a very bold choice and one that maybe on paper sounds like a bad idea, or perhaps a silly one. However, when it was done and executed on the show, it, in my personal opinion, was honestly great. It had this kindred connection between these two men, who are on opposite sides, however in a weird way kind of get each other. They're both the black sheeps of their sides, creating a bit of a friendship or potentially even brother-like dynamic between these two characters from the Batman universe, who in the comics typically don't have anything to do with each other. I just think that this version of the character is simply amazing, as you can probably tell. He's my favorite version of the Penguin ever, not just in live action, but just in general. And that's my ranking, which, like said, you don't need to agree with. And if you don't, leave that down below in the comments, your own ranking. I'm having a lot of fun with this series so far. I think the next villain I'll be doing is Deathstroke, however I'm not entirely sure. It also could be Two-Face. Or maybe even a third option, I'm not entirely sure yet. However, that's the end of the video. Like always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!